What's your best oh you thought this was bad? It gets worse story. This is a long one, but I promise it's worth it. A buddy of mine was cat sitting for a friend of his while the guy was out of town on a vacation. My buddy didn't have a car, so the dude told him that if he needed to go out and pick up more cat food or anything, he could borrow the car. At the time, my buddy was living right down the street from this guy, staying at his parents' house, so my buddy was just going over for a few hours each day to feed the cat and keep it company, then going back home. Meanwhile, he's also been flirting with this woman online. She lives several states away, but he feels like they seem to be getting pretty serious, so he decides to take some liberties, really push the envelope on where he'll pick up cat food from, and he takes his friend's car on a little multi-state road trip. This is insane, right? Just atrociously bad judgment, especially since someone does need to feed the cat. To solve this, he left his parents a note. It read, "I'm camping in the woods behind our house. Please go over to S and feed his cat. I'll let you know when I'm home." Boom. Problem solved, right? Except that the woods behind our house are about 20 yards deep. It takes less than 5 minutes to walk through them and come out into the neighboring housing development. So his parents went looking for him, calling out for him, and couldn't find him. They got worried and contacted a family friend, a local police officer. He subsequently got a hold of the fire department. There was a full-on search party combing through about 1/50th of an acre of woods. Unsurprisingly, they were coming up with nothing. This was before cell phones were common, so my buddy was completely unaware that his plan had fallen apart. He was cruising along on his 12-hour drive, expecting to get to this girl's house just in time for dinner, except he didn't have a GPS, so he got lost, very lost. Like, by the time he turned up at this woman's house, it was almost midnight. When he got there, she was crying her eyes out. He assured her that it was okay. He was fine, wasn't hurt or in a wreck or anything. He'd just gotten lost. And she said, no, I wasn't worried about you. My dad just died in a motorcycle accident. So he bailed on his cat-sitting duties, stole a car, and inspired his parents to file a missing persons, just so he could awkwardly watch a woman cry for a few hours and then drive back home. Arrive home from work. My house reeks of oil. Go in the basement, and there's a pool of oil with my stuff floating in it. The oil filter on my burner rotted out. It was defective and recalled, but the tech never bothered to notify me or replace it. Call up the tech. He throws a new one, charges me the emergency call fee, and advises I call Ho Insurance before running away. It was his fault. I didn't know it yet. This was February in New York, about 13th out, and obviously the burner wasn't on while sitting in a pool of oil. But they get there pretty quickly, soak it up, and get things running, so my pipes don't freeze. Only way to get the smell out is to dry clean everything I own, then shampoo all the carpets, run deodorizers, etc. Takes weeks. Had a headache the whole time. Turns out my basement has cracks. Most of it leaked through. They had to cut out my foundation and dig out the contaminated soil. Oil in soil means debt gets involved. Whole new can of worms, as they now had to monitor the process. Test at every step. Big enough deal I have a spill number in their database. A 20-yard dumpster with 20 yards of oil-soaked sand is so heavy that it broke through my driveway, destroying it. They did that twice. Took out my entire driveway. Remember how I said this was in February? March brought the COVID shutdown. I spent over a year with my basement in shambles. Holes in my driveway, plastic sheets taped up, no washer/dryer, and all sorts of equipment kicking around. The next spring, they're back and working, and screwed everything up. Not going to get into every detail, but after a big fight, I managed to get rid of them and bring in a new company to fix their screw ups and finish the job. Old crew got very difficult when the new crew requested permits and reports. Turns out, they never bothered. Had to do all that before they could start working again. New company dropped a storage crate on my yard to store my stuff while working. Destroyed my grass. Took out a sprinkler. Took out my neighbor's driveway curb. Got concrete all over my brickwork. But at least the nightmare was finally over. A long time ago I had a relationship that ended badly because she cheated. We were engaged. I tried to make it work, but the stress and lack of trust was too much for me, and I wound up having a breakdown and wound up in a mental hospital. They diagnosed me with schizoaffective disorder. Turned out she was pregnant and hadn't told me. I had no idea she had had a kid. 3 years later she committed suicide. I hadn't spoken to her since the day I left. My mother however found out from my ex's sister. At the time my mother had power of attorney over me because she was the one that had me hospitalized. So she had me declared unfit and fished my daughter out of the foster care system and adopted her herself. Except my mother never told me she raised her as my adopted sister, and even told me she was the granddaughter of a high school friend. It wasn't until she was a teenager that I found out, and only because my mom had a big folder of paperwork on my sister laying on the table. One of the papers had her birth mother's name on it. My sister is in her 20s now and still doesn't know. I can't tell her because I'm not supposed to know either. For a long time I debated taking all this to court, but I figure I would have lost anyway. When my mom's gone I'm probably gonna tell her. This still brings me to tears thinking about it. She was only 3, but she was in the room when my ex hung herself, and she thinks it was her birth aunt. One day, my partner and I are at a tacky little beach town, you know, fast food, lots of donuts and sweets, that kind of thing. Up until this point, I have enjoyed normal and absolutely non-disastrous digestion. Don't have any food triggers, no gastrointestinal problems, nothing. I suppose this day was the day that God decided to punish me for my hubris. It begins on the way back to the train. I still consider the universe merciful that it happened then, and not as the train pulled away. It's early in the evening, so busy but not too bad. Despite having never really experienced the warning bubble gut before in my life, some instinctive, evolutionary part of me recognizes it for what it is. I tell my partner I have got to find a bathroom. Thankfully, she is the kind of person who always notices the bathrooms, and we are not too far away from a public toilet. Spoiler, I do actually make it on time. I dash in there, thankfully finding a stall empty, and lock myself in. What followed is too painful to talk about. I was humbled before God. All I could do was grip the toilet with both hands and desperately try to distract myself trying to work out what had caused this misfortune before me. Thankfully I have the presence of mind to reach behind me every so often to courtesy flush. It occurs to me then that I can hear voices, women's voices. Jesus Christ, I'm in the women's bathroom, and I'm absolutely destroying it. I guess in my panic I missed any warning from my partner, and also the complete lack of urinals. There is literally nothing I can do about it right now, though, and to be honest it's the least of my worries. I endure this torture for around 20 minutes before it finally begins to taper off. I sit there for a while, suspicious, but it seems to be done. My gut still feels a bit weird, but whatever. It was literally just exposed to weapons grade chemicals. I can hardly blame it. Then I hear a timid voice from the entrance to the bathrooms. It's my partner, calling to see if I'm alright. The room goes deathly silent. I think some people may have noticed that I'd been in there for a while, and are probably trying to be nosy. I can hardly reply, so I sit in awkward silence. It's unbearable, but not as unbearable as the absolute cacophony of noise my but decides to make at that moment. It's like percussion and trumpets all in one. There is nothing I can do but sit there with my face in my hands. I hear various sounds of disgust and a few spatters of laughter. My partner, realizing the futility of her mission, retreats. Fast forward 10 more minutes, and I think I'm ready to begin cleaning up. Only there's no toilet roll. I mean, there's maybe like 3 squares of it left, and I'm in quite the state. I have no idea what to do. There are still people coming in and out of the bathrooms, so I can't even shuffle my shameless way into another stall. I don't see any other choice, though. I mean, what am I supposed to do here? I wait until it's completely silent outside, and then I gather my trousers up as close as I dare and bolt. I'm in an adjoining stall when the main door opens. I slam the door closed and lock it. Footsteps pass. They go to the stall I was just in. I've been courtesy flushing, but you know, there's still some evidence. I hear this poor woman swear. Who does that? She asks. I try to psychically let her know how sorry I am. But at least there's toilet roll here. Finally, the deed is done. I'm ready to emerge into the world. My butt feels like it's been done in with drain cleaner, but I'm mostly alive. I text my partner and ask her to act as lookout, and she makes sure the coast is clear, so I can quickly go and flush the afflicted stall I just abandoned, and also hurry out and try to wash my hands as thoroughly as possible in the limited time I have. Success. I manage it. We hurry to the door and immediately run into several mothers with their pushchairs. There's no way past them. We have to stop dead. We all look at one another for a moment, and you can see the conclusions they are jumping to. The indecency, my partner being the woman of Babylon, etc. This is not a classy area as it is. By this point I need you to know that I'm exhausted and ill and damn near tears, and I just can't stand the lecturing this might cause. We just shuffle past, and I look so ashamed that I probably back up every single one of the notions they had. We managed to catch the train an hour late, and every slight vibration in the track is agony for at least half of the way home. Never did find out what set me off, especially as my partner and I had the same food all day. Then again, that might not be a fair comparison. This woman is even immune to Delhi belly. TL. Doctor ate something weird and answered before God via a sequence of almost slapstick comedic occurrences in the women's bathroom.